Hello. Good evening. Can you hear me? Perfect. Welcome. My name is Walter Donnell, and on behalf of the Salisbury Forum Board, I'm delighted to have you here this evening for what I'm sure is going to be a great adventure. This is the fifth and final program of our season, our 7th year, the 32nd program we've had in the Salisbury Forum series since we started. And we couldn't do any of it without the support of, first of all, 3 organizations in town who give us seed money each year: Hotchkiss School, on behalf of the Scoville Library, the Friends of the Library, and our host this evening, Salisbury School. But 70% of our money comes from, 70% of our funding, however, does come from individual donor contributions. And in tonight's program, we've listed those who have given to this year's annual fund up until May 5th. We're more than happy to revise this list until June 30th. So you get the point. We could use your help. On March 10th, 2009, at 13 hours, 29 minutes, and 19 seconds, French time, skipper Rich Wilson in Great American 3 crossed the finish line of the Vendée Globe race at Les Sables d'Olonne. Excuse me, my French teacher. The race time was 121 days, 41 minutes, and 19 seconds. Throughout the Vendée Globe race, Rich Wilson connected his voyage to 250,000 students and 7 million readers weekly by publication of a 15-part series written on board the ship, which was published in 50 United States newspapers, and by maintaining the website Sites Alive, an organization which he founded. Schools in 16 countries participated in this adventure. Rich Wilson is a recipient of the Explorers Club 2009 Lowell Thomas Award, which that year was presented to a small group of explorers for their individual achievement, exploring risk. And for a little over the next hour, we're going to explore risk with this extraordinary man. Please welcome Rich Wilson.
It's nice to be here, up here in the northwest corner of Connecticut. As a sailor, I had followed this race, Vendée Globe, since it began in 1988. I never had any interest whatsoever in sailing it. It's too hard, it's too long, it's too dangerous. Boats are too big, sails are too big, and you're too far from land or help for most of the race. But for the previous 15 years, we've connected a variety of expeditions and adventures into classrooms to try to get students excited. And we thought that with the unique properties of the Vendée Globe actually going around the world, that we could then expand to getting students from all over the world to participate in a program, a live ocean adventure program. These were some of the programs we've done. We've done 75 full semester live interactive programs from rainforest research centers, from marine biology research centers, from other sailing ships at sea, through those 15 years. And 5 of those have been our voyages, but the vast preponderance from content elsewhere. Now, before you go to do Vendée Globe, you do have to have some experience at sea. 3 of our voyages had been long clipper ship routes, 15,000 miles each. Those were done in a 50-foot trimaran with 2 of us on board. San Francisco to Boston, New York to Melbourne, the Australian Gold Rush route, and Hong Kong to New York, the China Tea Trade route. Plus a solo transatlantic race as well. So that gave me a bit of confidence that the time at sea would be okay, possibly. But nonetheless, the prospect of the Vendée Globe is totally intimidating. Now, some people have asked, where did I get this adventure gene? And I always blame it on my mother. She went to Alaska in 1940 to host a radio show at the first commercial radio station in Fairbanks. She's on the left in Lake Harding there, and yes, all that white stuff behind her is ice. So I'm just trying to keep up with Mom. Now, this is a bit about the school program. Newspapers would commit space to us. We would deliver a feature once a week for the 15 weeks I was expected to be at sea. And these would be marketed to teachers locally, and then they would deliver a classroom set of 30 papers on the day of publication. Now, clearly, the best way to deliver a program like this is online, but the U.S. schools have been pretty far behind in actually getting on board with online through the years. So we had a comprehensive website, we've had that since the early 90s, but then we also had partnerships with AAAS in Washington. One of our veteran program managers, Neil Skorka, managed all of this in the home office. One of the things we did, since I'd be alone on the boat, wouldn't be able to write as much as when we had two of us on the boat, was assemble this team of experts, we called them. And this was quite an extraordinary group. And they would both write for the newspaper series, so students would be able to hear from a wide variety of perspectives from accomplished people, and as well answer students' questions online. So you have head of the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point, head maritime administrator for the U.S. government, professor of aeronautical engineering at MIT. Brian Barney-Walt was the head of emergency medicine at Tufts Medical Center in Boston. He played a key role in this race. My asthma doctor, Laura Marabella, is a tanker broker, SUNY Maritime graduate. Murray Lister had been chief mate aboard New Zealand Pacific when they rescued us off Cape Horn after a double somersault and capsize in a 60-foot trimaran in 1990. They had in their logbook 65-foot seas. Jonas Mialo was president of the Museum of Science. Marty Shea was my trainer, got me into the best physical shape of my life, not relative to age, but absolutely compared to high school and college as well before going on this. And my view always was, you hate to die at sea because you didn't do the last chin-up in practice. So Marty had a corollary to that. She didn't want to have it on her conscience that if I died at sea, that would have anything to do with her. So she worked me pretty hard. David Sobel, the author of Longitude, Galileo's Daughter. Sam Scott, maritime art curator. Jan Whitting, oceans and climate expert. Chuck Seisler is a sleep expert. Berkeley Women's. That's plays a key role in this as well. Maureen Leo, technology teacher, and connected to schools all over the world. Rich DeMoulian is a shipping owner and my shipmate on the Hong Kong, New York voyage, and as well Scott Hamilton, Mount Everest veteran. So pretty eclectic group, pretty neat group for students to hear from. Now, when I go to sea, we have these other two constituencies. Asthmatics, because I've had asthma since I was a one-year-old kid. I take 4 drugs a day to get up to the black line. The black line is my lung function test. I'm supposed to be at the red line. So my lungs work about 70% of normal with all of those medications on board. So that's a bit of a problem because sailing is actually a cardiovascular sport in this arena. And then in the last couple of voyages, I've been a senior, so the AARP was a new constituency. And that's a graph of the ages of the skippers. And you can see where I am, and there really aren't any drugs to help that problem. Now here's the boat we selected. The Open 60 is the class. This boat was from the 2000 vintage. You can see the sail plan there, full mainsail, 3 reefs, storm jib, staysail jib, reacher, and gennaker, 5 different options there, plus there's a gigantic spinnaker, keel, like big canting keel. The boat is 60 feet long, 90 feet high, and the mast 14.5 feet deep, 18 feet wide. So they're a little bit bigger in every dimension than the 12 meters used to sail in America's Cup, except you don't have the extra 10 guys on the boat. I sailed the boat back from France to see what I might like to change on the boat for my own safety. Had a massive collision with a submerged object 500 miles south of Iceland. Drove the dagger board back through the boat, opened up a hole in the boat, sheared off the dagger board, plus also sheared off one of the 2 rudders. Fortunately, the water coming in was coming into a ballast tank, so I was able to contain that, and I was able to change to a 3rd rudder that we had. It took 14 hours, but it actually gave me confidence that I would be able to make a repair at sea of a big issue, so that was good. Took the boat to Brian Harris for renovation, and you can see here, this is the keel, and there's a big hinge pin at each end of that. And then you're able to control with a 10-part on each side of the boat, a 10-to-1 pulley system to be able to control this massive thing. weighs 4 tons in total, 3 tons in the bottom. And here we're doing an acoustic test on the welds internally of that structure to see if it's sound before heading on. We brought all the mainsail controls back to the cockpit so that I could put a reef in the mainsail from there. We had 51 separate control lines coming into the cockpit, and so it's good to get some practice in so that you actually pick the right line in the middle of the night. I put a pedestal winch in also to drive 3 of the 5 winches. That's the coffee grinder you may have seen on other boats. 4 satellite telephones at the chart table, 2 complete autopilot systems, 2 satellite text systems, desalinator to make fresh water out of seawater. We had networks on board. We had routers and networks, Linksys routers, 2 computers as well, backup, and a small engine driving a big alternator. We had for electricity, plus solar panels, plus a wind turbine on the stern to make extra electricity. Now they do test to see if the boat's actually an open 60 and qualifies for the race. This is a pretty scary thing to see. When they do this, you tip the boat over on its side with a sling on the keel, put a load cell between the top of the mast and the dock, let off the keel, and see how much righting moment is generated by the form of factor of the boat and as well the keel. Now, that's a pretty scary thing to see, but also it's actually quite illustrative. You see how high the boat floats on its side, and you see that there isn't any water coming into the cockpit. And that's useful because these boats tend to take this configuration from time to time at sea. And here you can see what the canted keel looks like. You can see that it's about 40 to 45 degrees off from the vertical. And you also get a sense of how big the boats are. They're just pretty massive. So along with the development of the boat was development of our school program. Attended a World Association of Newspapers conference. And there are 74 countries represented with newspapers there. And we enlisted the interest of 37 countries' newspapers. And that was pretty cool. And they didn't care it was the French Yachts. This was going to be a live ocean expedition. And so that was what was really entertaining to them. Sailed the boat back with Mike Birch to France, double-handed, set up for a double-handed race to Brazil with Mike, set up for the required solo qualification race, transatlantic, in your boat back to France, December of 07. We took the boat out of the water there. You can see the underside. We would have 2 guys working on the boat, whereas most of the big teams would have 4 to 6 to 8 full time. But this was okay. Now, I was only the 3rd entrant from the U.S. in this race in its history. This was the 6th running of it. Mike Plant sailed in the first race, completed the course, didn't finish officially, had to stop for repair in New Zealand, and then sailing to France. For the start of the 2nd race, he was lost at sea. Actually, earlier this evening, we had a nice dinner, and Dean Simmons actually grew up with Mike in Minnesota. So I didn't know Mike well, but I knew him a little bit. Great guy. Second person to race was Bruce Schwab. Finished the race officially in 04. And the numbers in the triangle are accurate. So I like to try to prod the American media to get a little respect for our sport. Now, here's a bit of the problem. There's a new open 60 at speed, going about 20, 22, 24 knots. You have to be able to do all your navigation analysis, cook, sleep, make repairs with carbon fiber, make repairs with fiberglass, repair the electronics. They'll slow the boat, go to the top of the mast, stop the boat, go to the bottom of the keel, make all the sail changes on the foredeck, and this never stops. That's the thing about this race. There isn't any halftime, there isn't any end of the game. It just goes from the start until you finish. Just because the video stopped, it's kind of a relief for us to see that. The skipper's still out there getting hammered. Usually it's not quite that bad, sometimes it's a lot worse. It's a big deal sports event in France. You can see the press around the 30 skippers there before the race, starting with Sable DeLong. 750,000 people came to walk the docks before that race for those 3 weeks. It was incredible. And the French have a great attitude about these things. You know, they never asked if I thought I was going to win. That was pretty obvious, but also it's just not their nature. Their nature was, there was a 10-year-old boy came up to me and he said, "L'important c'est de participer." The important thing is to participate. And it was a great lesson, I think. It was exactly right. And the French really asked three things. They asked you to sail your best, they asked you to tell them what it was like at sea while they were on land, and they wanted you to come home. They were well aware that half the boats in each race don't finish, and that 3 sailors have been lost. School children all over the place. This was great. I particularly like this young girl here. Very intense, sound girl. Then all of the greats of the sport are there as well before. Danielle MacArthur came second in the 2000 race. Yves Parlier, a legendary repair at sea, broke his mast in the Indian Ocean, retrieved the 2 pieces, put up on a jury rig, sailed to an island south of New Zealand, anchored, set about fixing the mast, made a new mast at 58 feet long by himself, joining the 2 pieces, got that step at anchor by himself, and then set sail again, had to recut the sails, completed the race course from halfway around the world. Just an incredible thing. And this guy in the bottom picture, Jean-Philippe Guillemot, was Michel Desjoyeau's right-hand man. Michel Desjoyeaux was one of the favorites, and I think was probably the, my favorite for sure. And probably the most technically gifted guy on the dock there. And you might ask him, you might think that he would ask me the last day, is the desalination making enough fresh water? The computer circuits all working? The autopilot sensitivity and so forth? It wasn't bad at all. It was rich. We will be stuck on land. You will be at sea. You must tell us what it's like at sea. You must tell us of the gales in the south and the cold and the albatross. You must tell us these things. And that was really the French view. Pouring on all the food, 6,000 calories a day was the goal. 4 full meals a day every 6 hours. Eat, drink. Try to keep the fuel going. Finally, we head out, single file, at the start of the race. 300,000 people came to line the channel of Salvador. They knew what was at stake. They knew what was the challenge that the sailors were undertaking. They were behind you 100%. They were there from early in the morning and trying to just generate warmth from the skippers by virtue of their support. And particularly like this guy trying to get close to the water in the water. Every skipper got to the mouth of that channel and they were pretty much emotionally spent already. You can see that the corporate sponsors in Europe have figured it out. We didn't have a big one, so we were in this picture, but mostly privately funded. And here we go. Staysail, reef and the mainsail, getting off. We had 3 glorious weeks of weather at the Salvador. Then on race weekend, big storm forecast for the next day. It's cold, raining, and wet, blowing. Big storm forecast for the first weekend. The fleet heads out into this. I eventually get down a storm jib, 3 reefs in the main, as probably many of the other boats did too. And when that storm hit, it was just a calamity for the fleet. 3 broken masts, 1 broken hull. You can see Hugo Boss here, and hull's just coming apart. 2 of those masts were brand new, plus 5 others having to return for repairs, including Michel Desjoyeaux, who was one of the race favorites, a winner in 2000. I got through, our boat got through that storm okay. I didn't. I got thrown across the cabin, fetched up one-point landing on my spine on a grab bar across an opening through a bulkhead, got jackknifed through there, fetched up against the side of the boat. I went about 7 or 8 feet probably in the air. And I didn't know whether I might have gotten paralyzed or something. I hit so hard, one-point landing right on the spine. I sort of scrambled out of there, mostly to prove to myself that I could still actually move. Got out, but I could not reach across the chart table to get to the satellite telephone to call the emergency room at Tufts to talk through this situation with Brian. Just hurt too much. About 10 hours later, finally was able to, over the course of the next few days, talk with Brian quite a bit and eventually determined probably broken 1 or 2 ribs. Pretty painful injury, particularly if you still got to manage physical structures besides these boats. Now a little bit more about Michel. I had seen Michel on the dock after the qualification race back in Brazil. I met him once or twice before, just briefly. I approached him tentatively because he's really the best, to ask him in my best broken high school French whether I could send him some questions about how to sail these boats. He was very appreciative that I was trying to speak to him in French. He said, yes, that's okay, and it's okay to send them in English. So anyway, when I got back to the U.S., I wrote out 10 detailed questions for Michel, paragraph-long questions. So I wrote them in French because of my respect for him. 24 hours later, I got 10 detailed paragraph-long answers back from him in English. This went back and forth about 6 cycles. I'd write French, he'd write back in English. It was a great thing. One of the things that he sent me, this document, probably a secret document, but it's a sales selection plan and wind velocity and angle to the boat. And what's striking to me about this is down there in this little corner is where he'll set his 5,000 square foot spinnaker by himself up to 27 knots true wind speed. Which sort of makes some of the America's Cup stuff. They won't go out on the harbor when it's blowing 22 knots with 17 guys on the boat. It was a little silly, but anyway, Michel was great. We headed off, we kept going, trying to nursing the back a little bit, nursing the boat, got down past the Canary Islands. And, you know, this, when I talk about this respect for the race, you really got to keep doing the best you can all the time. Somebody like Yves Parlier is on the docks there, and you've got to try to live up the best you can to what he has done, the standards he has set. So I determined one of these days that I had to set the spinnaker. I was going downwind, probably reaching 15 knots of wind. So I went for it. I did. Finally, at midnight, I set the spinnaker for the first time. It's a massive thing. It's bigger than an entire tennis court, doubles included. And eventually got it up. And everybody who's a sailor has had sort of this sort of thing happen. This is another open 60 with a nice smaller spinnaker, actually. And you go on the line, and then suddenly you get overpowered by the spinnaker, and you get wiped out like this. And this is when the solo sailor kind of leans into the cabin and says, anybody would like to come up and help? Now would be a good time. The problem is there's never any answer. So you struggle to get the thing down because the wind speed had increased from 15 to about 24 knots. And we just got overpowered like this. So then you kill yourself trying to get the sail down. Then 5 hours later, the winds drop and you got to set it again. We go down the west coast of Africa, past Cape Verde Islands, on towards the equator, and get into the doldrums, get the palm there. You see the dolphins coming along to play in the bow wave, and you know that they're expecting for there to be a bow wave, so they can play in that, but there isn't, so they're just kind of talking among themselves what's going on. And there's a flying fish leap out of the water to escape predators, and they can glide on those thin wings for 100 yards, 150 yards. And sometimes they think the boat's a predator, so they get scared out of the water. Sometimes they get it backwards and come back at the boat. They might be coming through the cockpit. So I have some very big construction goggles that I would wear on those arenas, because if you ever get hit in the eye with one of these things, you never see it. It'll put your eye out. This is the biggest one I've ever seen. And the double rainbow is very nice, except it probably means there's a 40-knot squall over there. So you got the toes. The school program has been going on since the start. Daily audio report. We have a ship's log, ship's journal, Q&A 3 times a week, photos, video. I've got to send all that stuff in. Plus, here is the first 4 installments. According to topics that are in our teacher's guide. I would write the lead piece each week, and on a rotating basis, these experts would write another piece, so students would be able to hear from this wide variety of people. It was pretty neat. We had 25 newspapers there at the start of the program under contract. And when we got into the South Atlantic, got a message from Neil in the office saying, seems to be a lot of activity in Missouri. Like, what do you mean? We've known Don Kitchell, who's head of the Missouri newspaper education program for a long time. And she had promoted the program to the newspapers there. It turned out we had 25 extra newspapers in the state of Missouri, about as far from saltwater as you can get in the United States, following us in this French yacht race. But the point of that was that here was a live adventure with a very well thought out, strict curriculum, going to have deliverables every week, and it was a great way for students to be exposed to the sea. So 25 newspapers in the state of Missouri. An idea what it's like on the boat here, we're going across the South Atlantic, and we're in the Staysail and probably 2 weeks in Maine. The ribs are starting to feel better. It's 3 weeks in, and the fleet had stretched out. There was a lead pack of about 10 boats, brand new boats, that were way up in front, and those kind of extended second pack. down towards the first ice gate. There were 7 pairs of these ice gates, they call them, across the Southern Ocean. The idea was there were just 2 waypoints fixed by the race committee, and you had to be north of the line between those 2 points at some point, even if only for a minute. And now the idea there was to keep the fleet away from the deep Southern Ocean where you have icebergs. They had an experimental program going on with a French satellite system to actually try to take pictures of the icebergs to see if there were any new ones that they didn't know about. And the race committee could alter the location of those ice gates as well along the way. Now, I had studied with this guy, Jean-Yves Bourneau, the summer before for a week, one-on-one, 8 hours a day, homework at night about weather systems and the oceans of the world. We go through each ocean region, through the 2, 3, or 4 most likely scenarios that I encounter and what would be a likely response. What made Jean-Yves so unique was he actually raced around the world twice himself in Whitbread races. So he had actual experience. And do analyses like this. These are called group files. They're digital weather forecast files over the course of time. And you can integrate those with the polars from the boat, which is the boat's performance, to basically do a simulation of where you have to get to and how the computer thinks you should go. And then, of course, you apply your own judgment to that to make your decisions as you go along there. And you do that hours and hours and hours. Because anything that you can accomplish by brain rather than brawn is a lot better. Here's the first gale in the Indian Ocean. Had a nice sunny day actually. You see it starting to get up a little bit. Going about 40, going along for 3 weeks in Maine. No jib up at all, which was not my plan. That turned out to be a mistake. Because later on that night, what happens is we're going about 16 knots there or so, boat's tearing along. When it starts to blow 60 knots, the boat is hitting 22, 23 knots in just 3 reefs from Maine. And you can't get that sail down because it's up against the rigging. The only way to do that is to have a little jib up so that you can sail upwind into it. The sail blows away from the mast, then you can get it down. Without the storm jib up, I couldn't do that. So I had to, instead of setting the storm jib at 40 knots in the daylight, I had to set it at 60 knots of wind at night. And I got it up, but I got whacked in the head really hard with the storm jib sheet. It was flailing around while I got it set. Knocked me right to my knees by the mast. And so from there on, I would wear this helmet that we have, specifically for going aloft. And it's got a full Lexan visor as well. And so that would protect my head while I was on deck. I wore that on deck all the way from that incident, all the way basically back to the equator in the Atlantic. The secondary effect that it had was that if you just have a stocking cap on, wind just goes straight through it, your head's freezing all the time. But this cap, it's nice, it's like getting a little closet and it keeps your head warm. And you can see the barograph taking a big nosedive there. And about 36 hours later, we had a second gale, another 60-knot gale. So got pretty well hammered there early on. Now others in the fleet up ahead in the lead pack are suffering catastrophes as well. Loc Peyron, one of the great French sailors, had taken the lead. I actually led all the way through the Atlantic, 14 days in a row. Took the lead in the Indian Ocean as well. Went aloft to retrieve a halyard that had lost. Came down the next day, his mast exploded and broke, went over the side. And nobody was uncouth enough to ask what happened if you'd been out there with the mast broke. Earlier in the race, Mike Golding had gone aloft for repair. He took the lead when Loc Peyron's mast broke, and the next day his boat had 32.5 knots of speed in a squall, and his mast exploded also. Now, just as a comparison, you go water skiing at about 18 knots of speed or so. So you can imagine how fast these boats are going at 30s. One of the things that's nice in the Southern Ocean, you got to look for the positives down there. But the albatross that we do all the time. And they're flying around looking for squid, hopefully churned up in the wake of the boat. See the wind turbine going there. And this guy's flying around. There was one day I was in the cabin, watching the instruments, watching the computer, and as we go along, trying to monitor everything. Suddenly there was this huge crash on the mid-deck. I kind of ducked, thinking maybe the mast had broken, was going to be coming through, and then looked up, and there was this albatross that had crashed on the mid-deck. And he was all over the place, flailing around. He finally sort of ran up the deck, got through the lifelines, fell into the water, and and then they run them on their big webbed feet and then go on again and up into the air. And kind of wondered, did that albatross make an aerodynamic miscalculation? Not even possible. But anyway, it was pretty interesting. The school program has continued along through the south there, and I want to talk a little bit about Marty here, who's she was an All-American distance runner at Boston University and is now a world amateur time trial champion in cycling. And she was amazingly good. Now, one of the things that happens physically for these long races is that your upper body is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger because you're doing this all the time, but your legs really atrophy because they're statically bracing you all the time. And so Marty, I told this to Marty, and she devised some particularly torturous exercises, one of which was to hold two 20-pound dumbbells up here to destabilize you up high, and then do one leg's deep knee bends on a trampoline. Maybe young folks could try that sometime. But do sets of those, and you build up your strength. And the iPod's in there because one of the things that happens in the gales in the south particularly, it's so noisy outside. You don't want to be outside because you're exposed. If you can help it, if you don't have to make a sail change, you want to be inside looking at the instruments, following things that way. You can just see maybe white of breaking seas coming along. You don't know if they're going to come aboard or what. And your mind is just imagining the worst all the time. So you might listen to music to try to change your mood. Now, in the Deep South, it might be for classical music or something, but a friend of mine had given me a CD of 18 St. Benedictine monk chants. And there was one night that I listened to that 4 times in a row, 72 chants in a row to try to calm myself down because of what was happening outside. Big event happening up ahead. Jan Elias, great young French sailor, been around the world twice, was on the bow of his boat, on the bowsprit actually, relieving a line, he's tied to this tether. Boat's coming along 12 to 14 knots, takes off down to sea, hits 22, 23 knots, buries itself in the trough. He's outside. He gets crushed against by the weight of that water in the boat. Boat weighs 9 tons against the bow pulpit. Ends up with a broken tether. He's outside the boat, holding on to the bow pulpit with one hand. Somehow he got himself back on board, dragged himself back down the deck, into the cockpit, into the cabin, called on the Iridium, Denny Arrow, the race director, told him what happened, and Denny Arrow then contacted the Australian Navy. They dispatched a frigate out of Perth for idle time 48 hours, and as well the 2 closest boats in the race, Mark Guillemot in the gray boat that we saw in the Spanish shot, who was about 50 miles ahead of Jan, and Samantha Davies, young British sailor, who was about 400 miles away to the southwest to go to his position. Now, the tradition of the sea is to go to the aid of the mariner in distress. It's without question, without debate. That's one of the great things about the sport. The camaraderie in this fleet is really different from so many sports, I think. It's just amazing. And it was one of the great things. So Mark went there right away. Jan was unable to reach his severe pain medication, though it was only 6 feet away. Mark sailed by, mixed up his own, and tried to lob plastic water bottles down the companionway because Jan couldn't move, basically. Eventually the Australians got there, they were able to take him off. They had to let the boat go. It was 800 miles south. It wasn't really in a big path of ships or anything. Mark and then Samantha continued in the race, and they were given a time allowance for that. So they got Jan back to Perth, operated on him. Turned out he had a broken thigh bone, pelvis, and back, and flown home to France, 4 months in a rehab hospital thereafter. He's okay now. For my part, when I got to about that position, was finally able to get into the bunk. The first month of the race, with that rib problem, I was unable actually to physically contort enough through the pain to get into the bunks that are up on either side of the boat. And eventually did. There on the outside of those bulkheads I went through when I hurt my back the first time. Boat got knocked over in one of the gales, and I came flying out, went about 7 feet across, landed 1-point landing on my left eyebrow, and got up and sort of, okay, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. Everything happens at 2 o'clock in the morning. This seems okay. It seems okay. And this hand came away wet. And So I turned on the light, it's totally bloody, and I looked in the mirror, couldn't see this whole side of my face full of blood. And I thought momentarily about trying to take a picture of this and send it to the American media that thinks that sailing is such a sissy sport, but then I thought, you know, I can't see out of that eye. I'd be smarter to try to clean it up and find out what's wrong underneath. So I did, called into Brian, we talked it through, tried to staple it shut or stitch it shut, but it'd probably be because of where it is, better to try with the tape. And so I was able to get that nice piece of tape across there eventually, and sent the picture in to him, and also to Johnny Shode, who's the official French race doctor. Basically got 2 job offers and said, you know, if you can do that meticulous work while you're at sea in those conditions, we could use your help in emergency. Across the Indian Ocean there, our group entering the Indian Ocean had 5 boats in it. We were kind of the 3rd group. And we started to lose boats one by one. First, it was Unai Basurco, who was a Spanish skipper, broken rudder just off South Africa. Then next, this was between the 1st and 2nd gale, there was another French sailor who went straight into it. I made that detour to get on the proper side, the downwind side of that gale when it came along. He went straight into it. He got hammered, broke the autopilots, and some rigging. He had to retire. And then further along in this area, I thought that I saw a ship on an automatic identification system that we have that will identify ships at sea. I wasn't sure, so I called Derek Hatfield, Canadian, who was behind me about 100 miles. And Derek, I think that there may be a ship in this area. You know, be on high alert when you come through here. And he said, "Have you heard?" I said, "No, heard what?" I said, "Well, last night in our last gale, I got rolled over upside down. The mast was 30 degrees underwater, and when it came back up, the 2 spreaders on the port side were both broken off. He was out. He was disconsolate. He had raised all the money in small donations, built the boat himself. This was his big dream. So I tried to cheer him up. He couldn't do it. Called him back the next day. I had this quote he had made, the man in the arena quote from Teddy Roosevelt. And I read it to him. I said, "Derek, you're the man in the arena. You know, nothing to be ashamed of. You represented yourself, Canada, race well. You know, you'll be back." And that's such an inspirational quote. You're out here, and you'll be back. And so I talked to him every day until he was able to nurse his boat to Tasmania. And he continued along. Now, I wasn't the only one having challenges. Everybody was having challenges. This was Deacon Ferry, great young British sailor, with a brand new mainsail that was just falling apart, totally delaminating. And she had a brand new boat, fully sponsored and so forth. But she had such a great attitude. There it is. You know, what's the big deal? Start, turn left, give me your boat, check, Cape Lowen, check, next Cape Horn, check. And you finish. Big deal, 8x10 piece of paper. But she was amazing. She kept going, trying to nurse that mainsail home. And I can tell you, managing these boats is a monster effort. I would go 3,000 to 5,000 revolutions on a pedestal winch every day, 5 to 7 major sail changes. And anything that you have to add on top of that, like this, is just going to be overwhelmed. Because I had to drop the mainsail all the way one time and then go all the way back up. It was 1,500 revolutions on the pedestal. So if you have to do this up and down, you might be able to tackle this on a nice dry floor, a sail off, but you cannot do this at sea. And to even try up and down, she went through all the sail repair material, went through all the adhesives, then all her epoxies and so forth, trying to get that mainsail to hold together, but she kept going. The other British sailor, this was Samantha Davies. Now, when Derek dropped out, there was only one other sailor in my group. A guy named Johnny Malvin was up ahead of me by about 100 miles. Johnny had a mainsail from the same sailmaker as Dee. His mainsail was doing the same thing. So we had developed a nice iridium friendship really across the Indian Ocean. Where we talked almost every day. He'd called early on to warn me of an iceberg that he'd seen, and that I was bound in his path. And so we talked almost every day. And it was really nice. But then he started to talk about dropping out because his mainsail was falling apart too. And I tried to talk him out of it when we went past New Zealand, because if he did, then there'd be a huge gap ahead of me. There was a 1,000-mile gap behind me to the next 2 boats. I would have a 900-mile gap ahead of me. And if what happened to Jan happened to me in the middle of the Pacific, 2,500 miles from land, rather than 800 miles, it would be a week before anybody got it. But so I said to Johnny, you know, it'll be 5,000 miles to Cape Horn, get around there, you real long coast, you can drop out anytime, but maybe you can nurse the boat home and finish. He decided otherwise, and so he dropped out. So I headed out into the Pacific along, and with great trepidation. But 2 days then, I got an email from Samantha, the head. She was up at the beginning part of the second group. And she said, "Hi, Rich. I see you lost your last running mate from your group. It won't be much fun to sail the Pacific alone, so I'll be your virtual running mate. I'll check in with you every couple of days." And you might be able to hear in my voice how much that meant to me at that time, to have somebody else out there kind of keeping tabs on it. And that was a wonderful thing. But again, it's a maritime tradition of the sea. Do what you can to help. I call Derek every day. Samantha checked in with me every couple of days. She went along. What a great attitude she has too. I love the stuffed animals. She was doing really well in the race up the head of the second group, sailing a great race. I put this picture in just as a reminder that 14,000 of the 28,000 are highway sailed in the dark at night. So everything you do in the daytime, you got to be able to do at night as well. And finally get to the international date line there, halfway around. Took a picture just to commemorate the moment just for before and after. You can see 179.59 east longitude, 179.59 west. And if you take a picture of the GPS, it's really good if you're going fast, 13 knots. You don't want anybody to think that you're kind of dawdling out there. Into the Pacific, another big storm. The only named storm encountered by any of the competitors in the race, tropical storm Heta, that was forecast to dissipate after it kind of went westbound south of the equator. But then it looked to me to be pretty organized still, and then maybe it would increase and reorganize and re-intensify, and it did. And it started to come down, and it circled around up by the equator and came down to come across our path, and that's over there. These are wave height forecast maps, and you can see the waves just starting to develop there in those color codings. And it was destined to meet us right at the middle ice gate in the Pacific. So I dreamed up this plan to come up, touch that ice gate, so I respected the mark, jive away immediately, let this thing go in front of me, and then we would tack, or we'd sail right in behind me the following wind, get over to the last ice gate. It was a really good idea. It didn't work out that way at all. The storm just stopped right there, kept swirling, started to spin off secondary lows that came across. Eventually, had to bite the bullet, sail up into it, and tack out to get across that last ice gate. Now, in this section here, from the last ice gate down to Cape Horn, we'd really like that part to be pretty moderate, so that you can eat more, sleep more, do all the maintenance on the boat, try to really make sure that everything is set before you get to Cape Horn. I really had a unique perspective on that, I think, from the big capsize voyage we had in 1990 where we were in such big seas. And so that didn't turn out either. We got right up here, and I realized that we had a problem aloft, that I had to either not make a particular mistake all the way back, getting a backstay hooked around the spreader that might break it off if I pulled that stay in, or I had to go aloft and cut a piece of shock cord that was up there, and really creating a problem. Finally had a reasonable day, boats going on 11, 12 knots for a broad reaching. Determined I'd try to go up there. Hoisted 3 lines to the top of the mast. I had all this equipment. I had the helmet gun. I had elbow pads. My friend who played in the NHL. I had knee pads on, extra clothes, hiking boots just like this, plus those foot ascenders lashed on. I was able to get it all organized and made a couple of attempts to practice, because I had a conversation with one of the other competitors who'd gone aloft halfway up the mast, and he got stuck. He couldn't get down. So I really got to make sure I can get down. I went up 8 feet, came down, went up 15 feet, made some adjustments, and then came down again. And finally went to about a 30-minute round trip. I had to get to the second spreader, and got up there, cut the piece of shock cord, and came down. And I was completely done when I finished that. This forearm, trying to control that descender, pretty much done for about 24 hours, couldn't really use it. But we did accomplish that and continued along. Now, another big episode happening up ahead at Cape Horn. Jean Le Cam, one of the other magical French sailors, and they've got a lot of them. Going fast, he's in third place, hit something hard, and it broke the keel bulb. You can see there's no bulb on that fin. Broke that right off. Boat immediately capsized. He was able to get out the stress signal through a special opening in the hull. It's there for that purpose, a special through hull, and send out a signal. Nobody knew if he was okay though inside, if he was injured or anything. And so the next boat got there about 12 hours later. It was Vincent View, who had won the race in 2004. And after that, another French sailor, Arnaud Leclerc, got there a few hours later. And they took turns circling, hoping Jean would come out. Eventually he did in his survival suit, came out of the hatch in the stern of the boat, climbed down to the bottom, tied himself between the two rudders so he wouldn't get washed off. Vincent sailed his boat close by, tried to throw him a line to get it to him, and missed. And sailed all the way around again in a circle. Maneuvering these boats is really hard. They're big and they're alone. There's a lot of jobs to do. And so he did another circle, came by, second time, threw the line, second time, missed again. Third time, came back, threw it, missed again. Fourth time, getting desperate. These two guys grew up together, sailing in Port La Forêt in Britain. Went desperately close, had to get his friend, went desperately close, got the line to Jean, was all tied it around himself, in his survival suit, jumps in the water, puts some winches across to his boat, gets him aboard, they have a big hug in the cockpit, and then they notice that this is a neck spreader, it's a carbon tube, holds the mast up on each side so you have a big wide staying base. And that carbon tube had hit the fin and cracked the carbon tube, and the next day, Vincent's own mast broke and came down. The defending champions in 2004 sacrificed his own race to save his friend. But that's the tradition of the sea.
For us, for 19,500 miles, Cape Horn. I think we're going to see it. Going out the reef, going from third reef to the second reef. 165, right? Pedestal, it's on medium here, by the way. And we're dumping. There it was. Break ready, foggy, misty, rainy, forecast, still have that. There it is. The legend.
It's a momentous occasion for everyone that gets around it. Really sobering. Presumably you're out of the Southern Ocean at that point. You're going to turn the corner, be in the lead of the continent. You imagine all the sailors that have gone around there, tried to go around there, all the ships that have been lost from the Clipper era and other times as well. Captain Bligh couldn't get around east to west, turned around, had to go across the South Atlantic, Indian Ocean, or Pacific, and the duration of that voyage was contributory to the mutiny. The Beagle Channel is just up the coast a little bit. Charles Darwin, the Straits of Magellan are there. It's really kind of a sobering time for everybody to go around there. If you get past there, you're really thankful. So we turned the corner. You're hoping for a little bit of a respite. Didn't get that at all. We're faced with this monster storm coming out of the southern part of Brazil. We're going to run right into it. Here's the weather wave height forecast map. Red is bad. We have 30-foot seas we're predicting there. We sailed up into that, and I tacked over again to try to, no reason for any bravado here, trying to sail up into that wind. Might as well get them down inside of it. So we made a pretty big detour again, get them down inside of that. And we went along, 3 reefs in the mainsail again, small mainsail configuration, plus the storage ship. The boat is just tearing along. And one of the things that, another one of those things that you had a fear about since thinking about doing this race, is that with these boats with the canting keel, the keel's 45 degrees on one side, and if suddenly you have an accidental jibe or an accidental tack, so the mainsail's on the wrong side, then the boat just lays over. That's what happened. We took off down to sea. We hit the highest speed we hit the entire race, 24 and a half knots. The boat started to require return starboard. We were on port jibe. We did, and down below, just holding on. And going, oh no, you know exactly what's going to happen. 30 degrees off course, 40 degrees off course, 50 degrees off course. Bam! Boat crash jibes. Breaks the preventer that's holding the boom on that side. Boom, crashing across, goes into the running backstays. And if you think of the trigonometry of that running backstay is loaded. You put a huge force, perpendicular angle, it's just about an infinite load. Will the mast come down? Is the mast still there? Keel's on the wrong side. The boat just stabilizes about 70 degrees of heel and just sits there. And so it took me about half an hour to get this sorted out. And crash jibe back. Now you've got, one rudder is at surface of the water, the other rudder is waving around up in the sky somewhere. So you can't maneuver the boat at all until you get that rudder back in the water a little bit. You have to get the keel centered a little bit, the boat stands up a little bit more, it's in the water a little bit, and you're able to try to maneuver and crash jibe back and just hope everything holds. Because if it doesn't, that's it. So it did, and I had to sail back upwind again to take that mainsail down, and just with the storm jib and continue along. About 2 days later, we had an autopilot failure. I can steer the boat for 7 or 17 hours by hand, but I can't hand steer back to France. It's only 7,000 miles. So if that autopilot's done, then you are finished. So it took about 5 hours, but I was able to figure out what was wrong and find a problem. It's an electronic problem, you're never going to solve it. But it was a mechanical problem. It was a broken bolt. I was able to replace that. I can tell you, I was really demoralized at that point. You're getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep a day cumulatively. Your original idea to do 90-minute naps, which is equivalent to a sleep cycle, which is what's recommended, that's gone by the board a long time ago. You're doing 30 minutes, you're doing 20 minutes, you're doing 15 minutes. And you're in some weird state of where you're almost imagining what's going on. And very demoralized. We had this cartoon of the chart table for all of our voyages. That's got to be the default philosophy of all Monday Globe skippers. And in the darkest moments, I look at this and a light little smile on my face, hopefully. But you just have to never give up. It's like you parlay it, so you keep going. So that's pretty demoralizing. You start to call people, say, look, call the Dr. Moneyball, so you got me through the ribs, you got me through the eyes. Another episode before Cape Horn, where I actually fell out of the chart table bench when I was taking a nap, and I landed straight on my head, upside down, just crunched my neck. The neck still hurts 2 years later. So you got me through all that. Now you got to turn into a shrink and help get me home. And that was quite serious. I called Brian Harris, who refit the boat, and Brian can call you anytime. He said, yes, of course. That's sort of the state that you're in. Incredibly physically tired, incredibly emotionally tired, but you have to keep going. You have to keep going. Other people having big problems. This was Roland Jourdain, who was in second place going around Cape Horn. Hit something with his keel, cracked the bulkheads that held the keel on. He made this incredible repair at sea. Carbon plate, through bolts, all the bolts lined up nicely, epoxied onto that bulkhead. It held the keel all the way up. He sailed through the South Atlantic, through the North Atlantic, all the way to the Azores. Suddenly, big boom, and he let out all the sails and realized that his keel had broken off entirely. He imagined whether he could actually sail to the finish without a keel, but was determined that that was not going to be a wise thing to do. He sailed 27,000 miles and had to drop out of the waves. Radio Vacances, this was a great thing the French did. They had these radio interviews. They call every skipper every couple of days. It wasn't just the lead boats. A French-speaking interviewer, an English-speaking interviewer. This was Andy Robertson, the Scottish guy. And he remembered everything. He remembered about your ribs. He remembered about the autopilots. How are you, Rich? How's the boat doing? You're doing great. Hang in there. He really became a friend through the airways. This was live radio back in France. Really a remarkable thing. The emotions are running so high through this whole thing. put the muffins in there, because a friend of mine from school had sent me an email in Indian Ocean saying she didn't know what she could do to sort of help. But that a friend of hers, when she was going through breast cancer, a friend of hers had brought more muffins every week, and that she was going to send me email muffins. I didn't think it was really comparable, but it was really nicely thought. A little bit about the sleep, because that's such a huge issue. I had the starter race, it's called an ActiWatch. It's got an accelerometer in it. It will record when your wrist is steady. Somehow it differentiates between when you're just sitting at the chart table. We have a project going on actually with MIT students to analyze the sleep. Unfortunately, the ActiWatch failed after about 3 weeks, so neither they got the data nor did I get the data, which was also a loss, because then you can really tell how much sleep you are getting. So just to give you a little explanation, this is from the 2004 Transatlantic race. Each of these horizontal lines is a single day. The yellow is daytime hours, blue is nighttime, and the black is when I was sleeping. So you can see how short these naps are. And for the first 5 days of that, I used to have a problem, I had to go back and start set out again. Over the first 5 days, I averaged 2.5 hours of sleep. And when I finally, the 5th day, I slept right through this alarm, which is for the hearing impaired. It's a 120 decibel alarm. I slept through that. When I woke up, I didn't know my name. I didn't know I was on a boat. I didn't know I was in a race. I didn't know I was in the middle of the day. It took about an hour and a half for most of that to come back, and about 6 hours for all of it to come back, but that's sort of the state of mind. I put the anchor in here because off Brazil, when I got through those other trials, I suddenly realized that for some reason I had to download a 20-ton anchor through the satellite telephone to the boat. This was imperative. And of course you can't, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was that we had very low baud rate, 2.4K iridium telephones on the boat. And we had this high 56K baud rate, the old dial-up telephone. Big hemispheric dome that you've seen on cruise ships. But the dome was malfunctioning. So I was going to be forced to download this 20-ton anchor to the 2.4K baud rate iridium. This was going to take forever. And that was the problem. And I wrestled with that while I was wide awake for about 18 hours. So I'll give you an example of what the state of your mind is. Now, Michel Desjoyeaux started out 2 days after the rest of the fleet. He had to go back as well for a repair. He caught up through the Atlantic, sailing fast, found his own groove, got to the lead pack in the deep South Atlantic, took a pause, it seemed to catch his breath for a few days, and then took off again and slowly worked his way through the lead pack. And you could tell from the banter amongst those top sailors, Michel is coming, Michel is coming. The people were commenting, we're going too fast, we're pushing too hard, the boats were breaking. They're left, right, and center. You see masts, keels, rudders breaking. But Michel was pressing on. And he eventually sailed through the fleet in the Indian Ocean, took the lead in the Pacific, got around Cape Horn, and sailed away in the Atlantic again to win the race for the second time out of 2 tries. It's an amazing thing. You can see the reception he got there. Next in was Britair Armilla Clash. In second place, it stood by John Kahn off Cape Horn along with Vincent Ryu. Mark Guillemot, who had stood by his friend Jan Elliott south of Australia, finished in 3rd place, and that was amazing. He had problems with his boat too. He had to sail into a harbor south of New Zealand to try to make a repair to his mast. He went aloft, was able to make the repair, sailed across the Pacific, the repair didn't hold. Sailed into the Falkland Islands at Port Stanley there, anchored, went aloft again, made another repair, sailed up through the Atlantic with that repair, got all the way up past the Azores, closing in on the finish line, 1,000 miles from the finish. Big boom! Let out all the sails, and discovered that his keel had broken off entirely. Also. So he called into his design team. They informed him that if that boat heeled 28 degrees, it will tip over. So he sailed the last 3 days of the race holding the main sheet in his hand to finish. Everything is to finish this race. That was all the way really from the Indian Ocean. There was only a handful of boats that could win the race in the front by that point. Everybody else was, we need to finish this race. They gave Vincent Ryu a third place equivalent finish because that's the position he'd been in when he rescued John O'Connell off Cape Horn. Absolutely the right thing to do. Next in was the wondrous Samantha Davies, sailing a great race. Both named Roxy. She was happy all the time. Even in the gales, she was happy. I don't know how she did it, but there's a lesson there to be learned from her. Brian Thompson, who got stuck up the mast, came in fifth. And Dika Perry, indefatigable D. She nursed that mainsail all the way around the world and finished in sixth place. For us, the school program that continued all the way along. And after 15 weeks, we're contracted with newspapers, then that ended. And I can tell you that was a bit of a loss of motivation in a way for me, just because we didn't have the big, huge audience. I was pretty discouraged at any rate, and that didn't help. Kept the website going and all the reports going, but we didn't have that big reach. We continued along. And more trying times as well. Azores High is here. Most of the fleet comes up and they kind of arc around it. This was us. We got up here. That whole system just disappeared. The next one was coming out of Canada. Had to go north again, way out of the line here to pick that up and sail across. When we did, we were finally going downwind from France, which meant that we were heading for Norway, then we have to drive to head from Morocco, we have to drive to head from Stockholm, but we're never going to get there. And a friend sent an email out at this point when I was way out here, said, and I was trying to lighten my mood, I'm sure. You understand, of course, as you're 500 miles closer to Boston. It didn't lighten my mood. But we go along. 7th and 8th in were sister ships here, young French guy Arnaud Boissier and Steve White, young English guy, finishing the race, doing a great job. For us, this is just to give you an idea of what the sailors are dealing with. Here's the North Atlantic. As we came up here, we've got new storm, developing gale, developing gale. And it's all moving. And it's increasing and decreasing, and you're trying to pick your way through this all to get over here to France. At this point, we were right in here between this huge system, this big high. We went along, and we were overtaken by a huge container ship. I called on the radio and talked to the captain a little bit. We had a piece of our school program called Ship Sightings, where we put in pictures and to tell what the ship was carrying from where to where, so kids could get an idea about resource flows. And I talked to the captain and I said, what speed are you making? He said 18 knots. Isn't that a little slow for a ship of your size? He said, yeah, well, we're waiting for the 35-foot seas at the mouth of the English Channel to subside before we go in there. See, that's the wave height forecast map for there. That also is almost applying to us, trying to pick our way through the deep red and yellowish lines there as we go across towards the finish. Pretty spent, but finally we do make it in there. Coming in here, you can see the wind turbine has been knocked off the stern. These boats are almost flat bottoms, one upwind all the way from Cape Horn, pounded away. Just broke the wind turbine right off the back strut there. Coming in with 3 reefs in the main and the staysail. Going to be pretty calm about it. The beach is only 4/10 of a mile past the finish line, so you have to pay attention when you come in. And we were 121 days at sea at this point. Goal looks good. All Cisco functioning except for the turbine. We actually had that down below. But you can see number 37 coming home finally. And you know, the French were such a huge part of this whole thing. I was there about 4 months beforehand, immediately before the race, and a couple other months before that, getting the boat from Terry and so forth. Sometimes people sort of question the French here in the U.S. It just happens. They were terrific to me every step of the way. I only had a little friction with one guy, and it was Terry Dubois, who built the boat. He raced the boat around the world twice himself. And it's totally understandable. Some American guy he's never heard of comes to buy his boat, thinks he's going to race the Vendée Globe. So there was a little friction there. But when I crossed the finish line, the first person on the boat was Terry Dubois. And he was ecstatic. You can see him in that picture. Because it was the first time in 4 times around the world his boat had officially finished the Vendée Globe. And he was so happy. Samantha broke off a PR tour to come back. She's on one of those Zodiac's there somewhere to greet me as well. You come in to the dock, and you can see the reception there. We were finished in 9th place. Doesn't matter. People come to see you come home from the city. This lady here had sewn a dress entirely out of American flags for my arrival. So that's what it is. Now they take you up immediately onto a stage to get your very first promotions. How's everybody's French here? I determined I was tired of speaking French. If I got the chance, I was going to finish this race. So thank them. I thought through pretty much what I was trying to say.
Ce Vendée Globe était deux Vendée Globe. Un Vendée Globe en mer, très dur, très difficile, le plus stimulant dans le monde. Et avec des navigateurs incroyables. Beaucoup de conseils navigateurs incroyables et plusieurs des autres pays aussi. Et navigation l'Atlantique du Nord, du Sud, Océan Indien, Pacifique, Cap de Bonne-Espérance, Cap Horn. L'Atlantique encore sans fin, incroyable. Mais aussi, le Vendée Globe sur la Terre et l'autre Vendée Globe. Et
Basically saying really two Vendée Globes, one at sea, most of the hardest race in the world, sailing.
Sûrement l'approche à Cap Horn, pour les États-Unis, nous avons de nouveaux présidents. C'est bon. Il y a beaucoup de raisons. Notre troisième président, M. Thomas Jefferson, qui a écrit notre déclaration d'indépendance. Avant qu'il était notre président, il était notre ambassadeur à France. Et dans Paris, il a dit que tous les hommes ont deux pays, son pays et la France.
French really loved Thomas Jefferson. He said when he was ambassador, all men of two countries were all in France. I read that and remembered that.
Il était absolument correct. Parce que pour moi, cette expérience ici en France était incroyable. Dans le futur, quand les choses très difficiles sur la mer, les tempêtes, fatigue, pas d'ordure, sont perdus de ma mémoire. Je me souviendrai cet autre Vendée Globe, ici, sur la terre, en France, avec vous. Merci.
I was pretty heartfelt, as you can tell. And I would remember when I'd forgotten all the difficult parts of being at sea, I remember this part of the Vendée Globe and the encouragement always of the French people. They take you right into a press conference, school students there as well, and the emotion is really palpable. The next couple of days, people come down to the boat, they want to see the boat that just finished, they want to talk to the skipper, maybe get a picture, or have their kids get a picture with the skipper and so forth. And this gentleman came down, it was the next day, and most of the time there were sort of 8, 12, 20 people around in a group around the boat. He came down, he was down the dock a little bit, separate, he didn't even join the periphery of this group. So when the group disbanded, I walked down there to say hello to him. And I came up to him and he started crying. Of course I started crying too. And it wasn't just that I had sailed around the world and he had watched, but it was the French public knew they had a role to play, and that was to live and breathe every triumph and travail of every skipper at sea. And it was we, humanity, that had sailed the globe together, and that's what he was so emotional about. He exactly right. A couple of days later, Raphael and Norbert finished 10th and 11th place, and you can see in the picture here, it's particularly good for young folks to see the camaraderie, this true affection among the skippers here. We've all been through something extraordinary. We're all competitors trying to beat each other. That didn't matter. You know, there's a real mutual respect here, and that's so special in sports. Came back to the U.S., visited some schools that participated with our program. That's always a great thing to do. And then back to France. This particular race exceeded all the others in all media measures by 40 to 70%, I think it was, and the most popular race that they had so far. Back for the prize-giving ceremony in Les Sables d'Olonne. Here's Jan Elias, 4 months in a rehab hospital. He was walking again, limping, but he was going to be okay. Reunion with Deacon Ferry, who nursed Steph Mansell around the world, and just seeing some other folks. The Monte Globe book was out already, and so there was a book signing at the local bookstore. And then they take you outside to the prize-giving ceremony on the beach. The Oscars should go to Les Sables d'Olonne to find out how to put on a show. 120,000 people came 10 weeks after the final boat finished the race to come and salute the race, salute the boats, salute the skippers, the race organizers, the sponsors, and salute themselves because they were there to step up the way too. You know, when Jan Elias was hurt off Australia, France stopped. Northern Ireland was upside down on Cape Horn. France stopped. There's the group. What an honor to be part of that group. There's Michel Desjoyaux, the winner. Jean Leclerc rescued off Cape Horn. Guy in a suit there. And Vincent Rioux at the end, who rescued Jean Leclerc off Cape Horn. Only 11 boats finished out of the 30. Everybody came back. It's a special event. There's the crowd. Just an amazing event to be a participant in. A real honor and privilege. I walked down the barricade and tried to thank people as much as I could, just shake hands with people. They've been so supportive all the way. And then back to the bookstore the next day, we continued the book signing. I got there, the previous day there had been about a dozen skippers. That Sunday morning there was only one skipper. It was Michel Desjoyaux, the winner. Mon professeur, and I got a chance to sit with him. His book was already out. But so I got a chance to sit with him, and he actually started pushing his book to me so I could sign my name under his, and what a thrill that was. But I also got a chance to ask him, how did he do it? You know, how did he start out 2 days behind, catch up, sail through the fleet, and win the race? He said, well, he thought that the lead pack were sailing very fast, but they kind of got into a groove where somebody looks over and says, well, I'm keeping up with Sebastian, he must be doing okay. He got into his own groove. He thought they were in a false rhythm, it turned out, and he was able to catch up, keep his pace going, and sort of sail through the fleet to win. But you can see there, again, he's first place, that was 9th place, didn't matter. We both finished the Vendée Globe. You know, when I finished that race, I don't say this to be dramatic, I thought I'd never go sailing again. I was beat up physically, emotionally, mentally. I was done. I determined I would never sail a boat back across the Atlantic. Put her up for sale there. Maybe I'd go sailing with very small boats, but who knew? But the French public kept asking in those days thereafter, and then back at the prize giving, you know, 2012, Monsieur Wilson, 2012, will you be back in 2012? And I thought, originally I'd say, you know, une fois par vie, one time per lifetime, and smile, and they sort of accepted that, but I thought I really needed a better answer than that. The question was asked sincerely, it needed a sincere response. So I started to imagine what would it take to go back. And we finally determined that we really need globally committed distribution channels, so we knew we were getting to these audiences for those 3 constituencies. It means a big drug company for asthma, the K-12 means probably somebody like Pearson, seniors at AARP here in the U.S. And we need access to a newer generation boat, because I accumulated fatigue curve both for the boat and the skipper. It's so severe at the end that you just have to take 2 weeks off of it by virtue of a newer design. So we need access to a 2008 generation boat. So we set about trying to do that. We made great progress on the top 3, not so much on finding corporate partners to help with the last one. So the race starts in November, I'll go and watch the start, but we won't be there. But maybe 2016. You never know. We said we'll go back to Pearl FRA where we had prepared her. Tied her up to the same figure pier. We've done that for 3 months before the race. She was my shipmate. I had guided her, and she had defended me from the gales in the Indian Ocean particularly. And finally, it was time for us both to have a rest. Thanks very much.
We're going to take some questions from the floor. Actually, some Salisbury students may have classes first thing in the morning, so you may want to sneak out if you wish. You don't have to leave. If you have to go to get ready, go ahead, please. But we do have time for some questions, which is more than happy to answer them. We're going to have to shout them out, or we have a mic that Lisa can bring to you too. Yes, Jay.
You mentioned several times that a mast exploded. What did you mean by that? And also, what are they made out of, the material of the mast?
They're built out of carbon tubes, and when I say exploded, it just means it blew up all of a sudden. And carbon doesn't bend a little bit like aluminum might or dent or something. When it breaks, and it's done. Mike Golding's, the squall came, 50-knot squall or something, the boat took off at 32.5 knots. Apparently it stretched the running backstay out so much, right on the huge wind, it's almost inconceivable to imagine. And so that let it off and off to some part of the boat. Yes. Yeah, it's the Vendée region in France. It's a region in Loire-Atlantique, I think. It's a department within the region of France. So, that's what it is. Well, they support it. They put a lot of money into it. To get that many people showing up in the town for a period of time, it becomes known for that. There are a number of other ports in France that have their own special races as well. Saint-Malo is one that's a solo race. Yeah.
You mentioned the secret asylum. The impression I had is it was not there.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, does anybody know what happened with that?
No, it was a little too bad because they were very much too bad. It was a new boat, but it was pretty far south. And I think they just thought it's not in shipping lane. And there were a few other boats in the race, like Salt. No. Anybody knows where that went. Still too bad, though. There were a couple of guys who were ready to go, but apparently, sort of the hearsay story was that I'll show you, maybe they don't want to take it because it's with the security. It's probably not really common. The Australians have been great as well. They've rescued a lot of people in this race in the past.
Yeah, Rich, on the new 2012 boats, do they have radically new designs to better take care of the human being physically inside?
They, the 2008 generation boats made a big step towards there. Some of them did. Like Michelle's boat had this big sliding cockpit cover, so you could joke about it. We could sort of go out and put a reef in the main of the slippers. I mean, it was totally closed. And we had extended the cuddy to provide more protection for me in the cockpit as well. But some of the boats are pretty open. I think it's pretty scary. I liked having a very small cockpit, deep cockpit. It felt more secure than I think some of the new boats. But they're trying to do a lot more than that. Protect the skippers. Yes.
Are you tethered the whole time?
Good question. I'm tethered the whole time. I'm tethered most of the time. And I say that because there are some circumstances where it's safer to unclip the tether. That sounds wrong, but if you're on the foredeck, you're making a big sail change, particularly like going from Spinnaker to Big Jennifer or something like that, where it's just a full-on effort. And I used to time these things to see how fast I could do it, and also try to keep the pressure on to do it well. And it would take about 31 minutes to make that change, and that's full on. It's like going to the gym, you just don't get off the machine for 31 minutes. But then, you're going around the stays up there, there's quotes everywhere, sales, and so sometimes you can get hung up with that tether. So you may have to look at, because you got to move fast, and that's safer to finish the job faster. Yes.
You talked about listening, uploading, and is there a scenario where your shore guys would say Rich lost it and we're going to get him out of it?
Probably not. I mean, Brian Harris was key because he'd been through this before with other skippers, so he knew what the stresses were. And Dr. Barney Walls had emergency medicine, which was seeing a lot of stuff.
Were they watching for that?
No, they're not going to. Who's going to pull you off? Coast Guard can't get to you most of the time. The Coast Guard, the first one to say, after day one, you're on your own. You're too far for our helicopters to get to. For any Coast Guards. Maybe there's a ship in the area. There actually was a ship that was standing by Charlottetown, but couldn't figure out anything to do. They didn't know what to do. It takes. We were lucky when we had the capsize voyage that the ship that came was highly skilled, and they brought a gigantic vessel alongside in the middle of the night. The seas decreased to about 40 feet.
We have a question over here. Joe?
I was really curious about the skipper whose boat had totally capsized and he was inside, right, for, what did you say, 4 days or something?
No, it's probably 16, 18, 20 hours maybe.
Right, now, so was he dry in there? I mean, was there an air pocket that he could be in?
Probably. I mean, the boats have, the French have some great rules for this race. One of which is that you have to have 130% of physical buoyancy in your boat versus the displacement. So you fill a whole boat up with water, it's not going to sink. So that's the point. Now, it's going to be floating fairly high, probably, because it doesn't have a keel anymore. It doesn't have the 3 tons that's in that boat. So he may be, depends how sealed up the boat was when it went over. He was able to close the door really quickly. I sailed across the whole south with the door closed, mostly because it was so cold outside. And the cold snap I always forget to talk about because it just became background noise. But in those 60-knot gales, it's like 10-degree wind chill factor. You got to go out and get the sail change before that. That's unbelievable. But so he was probably, I mean, maybe at his worst. When we were upside down on Cape Horn, we were about shin deep in water. The pontoons were actually holding the boat up. I don't know what the situation was inside.
And would he have been in his wetsuit then?
He would have put a survival suit on to come out, and he did. And I'm going to hatch.
That's just amazing. Thank you.
Are they supposed to post at fiberglass or plywood?
The hulls of the 30 boats, 28 of them were carbon hulls. There was one aluminum boat, we were the only fiberglass boat. And so I mean, the fiberglass actually, in a way, has a little bit more give maybe at some point. Like a shadow plate like the carbon plate. One of the things that happened with our particular boat was the fiberglass will bend a lot more. So if you really load up the backstays and mass pushing down, that whole boat's going to bend like that. So designed into it are these 2 longitudinal bulkheads from the bow to the stern, about a meter into each side. So then stability. What that also does is it divides the boat up into many more watertight compartments. You have to have 5 by the rules. We had 11. And so that's also sort of comforting. So if you put a hole in the boat somewhere, maybe you can seal that part off and keep going. And that's why when I had the collision with a submerged object, it opened up the hole. I could hear water coming in. I couldn't find it where it was coming in. But when I came back from the bow, I closed every watertight door in that boat.
What's the approximate cost of a boat such as the one you sail properly equipped?
I usually prefer to talk about the the ones that were fully sponsored. Those are the latest of the new generation boats, there are 20 brand new boats specifically built for that race. And those were probably 8 or 9 million euro projects over a 4-year. But, you know, it sounds like a lot, but if you think about it, it's probably like a second baseman for a Red Sox. In American sports, it's not that much. But what you get out of it with this 3-month-long, 4-month-long voyage, for us, we spent a lot less than that. It was over $1 million. We had some friends who were from business school who have been quite successful on Wall Street. But they like the idea. So look, we actually absolutely support what you're doing with the schools. We get the point about the athletes to do this. It's going to have an impact. And so we're behind you 100%. But trying to find corporate sponsorship in the U.S. Very difficult.
I've got a couple more questions.
Throughout 421 days, the French race on the heat.
Well, yeah, a lot of hot meals, but I only cook in water. I go through granola and this homemade granola for breakfast. We found, I'll just give it sort of a skeleton of it. Bumblebee had a nice line of foil packed tuna steaks, chicken breast, and so forth for lunch. And then at dinner, I'd have freeze-dried dinner, always for 2 people. And then at midnight, I'd have a pasta meal as well. Any snack in between. One part of the 7 spreadsheets for the food with all the calories and grams and fluids and everything else. And it's sort of remarkable what you learn some of these things. I can tell you that part of the diet was 1 sleeve of fig Newtons every day because I don't have so much extra sugar. There are 15 fig Newtons in a sleeve, 55 calories each fig Newton, 825 calories a sleeve of fig Newtons. Bizarre knowledge of you. Yeah.
The boat that had the bulge shear off its keel, you said it is something.
Yeah.
Now, are there stuff under the water, like
Yeah.
floating submerged debris?
Yeah, I think I think he thinks he probably hit a whale. Johnny Malvin thinks he hit a whale too, but he had damage to Daggerboard and I think Roland Jourdain also. And as the boats get faster, part of that is they're not making so much noise as they're going through the water. They're easier through the water, so they're quiet. And that seems to happen. There are containers that are over the side, but I don't think they thought that was it. When I had my collision, it was solid. It stopped the boat, boom, 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 12 knots down, 0 knots. But I don't think it was a container. I think it was a tree trunk or a big wood crate or something. But not a container.
I think that's it. Thank you all.
But they